The joke echoed through Kingsley Conservatory's marble halls. Adrian Kingsley laughing with his elite friends about an impossible challenge. Sing Mozart's hardest aria, and he'd marry you on the spot. Everyone knew it was ridiculous. But hidden in the shadows with a mop in her hands, Naomi Carter heard every word, and something dangerous stirred in her chest. What none of them knew was that the quiet girl who cleaned their practice rooms had been singing that exact piece in secret for years, her voice more powerful than anything their privilege could buy. And when that very aria became the audition requirement for the televised winter showcase, Naomi faced an impossible choice: stay invisible and safe, or step into the spotlight and show them all what happens when you underestimate the maid's daughter. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The practice rooms at Kingsley Conservatory smelled like old wood and expensive perfume, a combination Naomi Carter had grown used to over the years. She pushed her cleaning cart quietly down the corridor, careful not to let the wheels squeak against the polished marble floors. It was nearly 8 in the evening, and most of the students had left for dinner, leaving behind their scattered sheet music and half-empty water bottles. Naomi paused outside practice room 7. The door stood slightly ajar, revealing the grand piano inside, its black surface gleaming under the soft overhead lights. She glanced down the hallway, empty, then slipped inside with her supplies. As she wiped down the piano bench, her fingers accidentally brushed against the keys, producing a single, clear note that hung in the air. Before she could stop herself, she was humming. The melody came naturally, effortlessly. Mozart's Der Hölle Rache, the infamous Queen of the Night aria. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper, but it carried a purity that seemed to make the room itself hold its breath. She closed her eyes, letting the music flow through her, each note precise and crystalline. The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted her back to reality. Her heart hammering, Naomi grabbed her spray bottle and cloth, busying herself with wiping down the piano's surface as if nothing had happened. The footsteps passed by without pausing, but her hands continued to shake for several minutes afterward. 3 floors above, in the conservatory's luxury lounge reserved for legacy students, Adrian Kingsley sprawled across a leather sofa while his classmates debated the merits of various opera composers. Adrian wasn't really listening. He rarely did during these gatherings, which felt more like mandatory social obligations than actual friendships. "Come on, Adrian," Marcus Webb called out, tossing a crumpled napkin at him. "You're the director's son. Tell us, are you even serious about music, or are you just coasting on your last name?" The group laughed, but there was an edge to it. Adrian had heard variations of this question his entire life. He sat up, irritation flickering across his face. "I'm as serious as I need to be," he said flatly. "That's not exactly a ringing endorsement," another student chimed in. "When was the last time you actually practiced?" Adrian's jaw tightened. The truth was he'd been practicing more lately, but admitting that felt like giving them exactly what they wanted, proof that he cared what they thought. "Fine," Adrian said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You want proof I'm serious? Here's a challenge for you all. Whoever can sing Mozart's hardest piece for me, the Queen of the Night aria, I'll marry them on the spot." The room erupted in laughter. Everyone knew the piece was nearly impossible, with its famously demanding high F notes that even professional sopranos struggled with. No student at Kingsley had ever performed it successfully. "You're insane," Marcus said between laughs. "Nobody here can sing that." "Exactly my point," Adrian replied, leaning back with a smirk. "So you can all stop questioning my commitment." The joke spread quickly through the lounge, students repeating it to each other with increasing embellishment. By the time the group dispersed for dinner, the challenge had become part of campus legend, Adrian Kingsley's impossible marriage proposal. Down in the practice wing, Naomi had just finished cleaning room 7 when she heard voices approaching. She quickly positioned herself beside her cart, head down, hoping to remain invisible as students passed by. But they stopped right near her, still laughing about something. "I'm telling you, Adrian actually said it," one of them was saying. "Whoever sings the Queen of the Night aria, he'll marry them." "Like that's ever happening," another voice responded. "That piece is impossible. Even the professors can't hit those notes properly." Naomi's hands tightened on the handle of her cart. She knew that piece. She'd been singing it in secret for 2 years, ever since she'd found an old recording in the conservatory's library. The notes that terrified everyone else felt natural to her, as if her voice had been designed specifically for those impossible intervals. But the thought of performing it, of standing on a stage where people could see her, judge her, remember that she was just the maid's daughter, made her stomach twist with anxiety. "Watch out," someone said sharply, and Naomi realized she'd been standing motionless in the middle of the hallway. She looked up to find herself face to face with the group from the lounge, Adrian at the center. His eyes met hers for a brief moment, and something flickered in his expression. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. Naomi's face had gone pale, her eyes wider than usual, and she looked strangely stricken. "You okay?" Adrian asked, his voice gentler than she expected. "Fine," Naomi mumbled, already turning her cart around. "Sorry, I'll get out of your way." She hurried down the corridor, but she could feel his gaze following her until she turned the corner. Why was the cleaning girl just standing there? One of Adrian's companions asked with a laugh. "The maid's girl," another corrected snidely. "That's Naomi something. Her mom works in the kitchens." Adrian frowned slightly. He'd seen Naomi around campus before, always quiet, always working, always trying to be invisible. But her reaction to their conversation had been strange. For just a moment, she'd looked almost wounded, or maybe longing. He couldn't quite place it. "Hey, relax," Adrian said to the kid who'd called her the maid's girl, though his tone was casual rather than firm. "She's just doing her job." It wasn't much of a defense, and Naomi, still within earshot around the corner, registered that fact clearly. He wasn't defending her. He was just uncomfortable with the open cruelty. There was a difference, and she knew it well. By the time Naomi left the conservatory that evening, twilight had settled over the campus. She walked the worn path that led to the staff cottages, small, neat houses tucked behind the main buildings where the conservatory's service employees lived. Her mother, Amara, was already home, preparing dinner in their tiny kitchen. "Long day?" Amara asked, glancing up from the stove. "They're all long," Naomi replied, dropping her bag by the door. Amara studied her daughter's face with a mother's precision. Something happened. Naomi hesitated, then told her about the joke. Adrian's ridiculous challenge. The aria everyone said was impossible, the way her heart had ached when she heard it. Amara's expression grew serious. She dried her hands on a towel and sat down across from Naomi at their small table. "Baby, listen to me carefully," she said. "We have a good life here. We have a roof, steady work, respect from most of the staff. But we have it because we know our place. I know that, Mom. Do you?" Amara's voice was gentle but firm. "Because the look on your face right now tells me you're thinking about something dangerous. We work for them, Naomi. We don't shine in front of them. That's how we stay safe." Naomi looked down at her hands, fighting back the burning sensation behind her eyes. "I wasn't thinking anything." But they both knew she was lying. That same evening, across the campus in the grand Kingsley estate that overlooked the conservatory, Adrian sat through dinner with his mother, Evelyn Kingsley. The dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably, but tonight it was just the two of them at opposite ends of the long mahogany table. "I heard you were joking about marriage proposals today," Evelyn said, her tone clipped and disapproving. Adrian should have known word would reach her. Everything reached her eventually. It was just a joke, Mother. Everything is a joke to you, Adrian. That's precisely the problem. Evelyn set down her fork with careful precision. The Kingsley family has maintained this conservatory for 3 generations. Your grandfather built this institution from nothing. Your father expanded it into one of the most prestigious music schools in the country, and you treat it like it's some kind of social club. I'm here, aren't I? I'm enrolled. I'm attending classes. You're coasting, Evelyn said sharply. You have talent, real talent, but you waste it because you're too afraid of failure to actually try. So you make jokes and pretend nothing matters. Adrian felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the suffocating weight of expectations he'd never asked for. Maybe I just don't want the same things you want for me. Then what do you want? He didn't have an answer. That was the worst part. He genuinely didn't know. After dinner, Adrian found himself wandering the conservatory grounds, unable to settle. The campus was beautiful at night, with soft lights illuminating the pathways between buildings. He walked without direction, just moving to move, trying to escape the conversation with his mother that seemed to repeat itself endlessly in different variations. As he passed near the old wing of the conservatory, the section that housed storage rooms and maintenance areas, he heard something that made him stop mid-step. A voice. Faint, distant, but unmistakably beautiful. Adrian turned toward the sound, trying to pinpoint its source. It seemed to be coming from somewhere inside the building, filtered through vents or thin walls. The melody was delicate and heartbreaking, each note pure and controlled. Whoever was singing had a voice unlike anything he'd heard on campus, and he'd heard plenty. He followed the sound as well as he could, but it was like chasing a ghost. By the time he reached what he thought was the source, a maintenance corridor, the singing had stopped. He saw a shadow move at the far end of the hallway, someone slipping away through a door, but he couldn't make out who it was. Adrian stood there for a long moment, the last notes still echoing in his memory. He wanted to hear that voice again, needed to, somehow. Late that night, in her small bedroom, Naomi sat on her bed with sheet music spread around her. She'd collected these pages carefully over the years, printing them quietly in the library, buying damaged copies from the campus bookstore, even hand-copying some pieces when she couldn't afford to print them. The Queen of the Night aria lay on top of the pile. She knew she shouldn't even be thinking about it. Her mother's warning still rang in her ears, but she couldn't help imagining what it would feel like to sing it freely, not hidden away in storage hallways and empty stairwells, but on an actual stage with an actual audience who was there to listen. In the darkness, Naomi allowed herself one quiet run-through of the aria's most difficult passage. Her voice soared effortlessly through the impossible intervals, hitting the high notes with crystalline precision. For 3 minutes she let herself believe it was possible. Then she stopped, reality crashing back down. She carefully folded the sheet music and tucked it under her pillow, out of sight. The next morning, Dr. Lawrence Hale, the conservatory's director and Adrian's father in all but blood. He'd been his father's closest friend and had essentially raised Adrian after his father's death, gathered students in the main auditorium for an announcement. As you all know, Dr. Hale began, his voice carrying easily through the space, our annual winter showcase is approaching. This year we'll be doing something different. The audition piece will be Mozart's Der Hölle Rache. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Students turned to each other, whispers building to a confused roar. I know it's challenging, Dr. Hale continued, raising his hands for quiet. But this conservatory was built on the principle of pushing boundaries. Those who wish to audition have 3 weeks to prepare. Naomi, standing at the back of the auditorium with her cleaning supplies, felt the floor tilt beneath her. The aria. They'd chosen the aria. Around her, students were already panicking, discussing whether it was even worth trying. But all Naomi could think was that if she auditioned, if she sang, everyone would know. There would be no more hiding, no more safety. And part of her, the part she tried so hard to suppress, wanted that more than anything. The days following Dr. Hale's announcement transformed the conservatory into a pressure cooker of anxiety and ambition. Practice rooms were booked solid from dawn until midnight, and the sound of students attempting the Queen of the Night aria echoed through every hallway, most attempts ending in frustration or cracked notes. Naomi continued her cleaning rounds, but now every space was filled with music. She listened silently as students struggled with passages she could sing in her sleep, biting her tongue to keep from humming along. Adrian had become obsessed with finding the mysterious singer he'd heard. He questioned the sound technician about late-night practice room bookings, checked security logs, even asked maintenance staff if they'd heard anyone singing after hours. No one had answers. "Why do you care so much?" Marcus asked him one afternoon as they left music theory class. Adrian didn't have a good answer. That voice was different, special, like nothing I've heard here before. "Maybe you imagined it," Marcus suggested with a shrug. But Adrian knew he hadn't. That voice had been real, and it haunted him. Meanwhile, Naomi was fighting her own internal battle. Every day she told herself she wouldn't audition. It was too risky, too dangerous, too far outside the boundaries her mother had set. But every night she found herself practicing, in the maintenance corridors, in the empty laundry room, in any space where she thought no one would hear. Her resolve was weakening, and she knew it. One afternoon, Naomi was mopping the stage of the main auditorium, where auditions would be held. The space was empty, the house lights dim, and for a moment she allowed herself to stop at center stage. She looked out at the rows of empty seats, imagining them filled with people. Her heart pounded with equal parts terror and longing. "Picturing yourself up there?" The voice startled her so badly she nearly dropped her mop. Chloe Hamilton stood in the wing, a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. Chloe was the conservatory's top vocalist, beautiful, talented, and utterly aware of both facts. "Just cleaning?" Naomi said quickly, returning to her mop. Chloe walked onto the stage, her designer shoes clicking against the wood. "The showcase piece is pretty brutal, isn't it? I've been practicing 8 hours a day. Of course, I'm the only one here who actually has a shot at performing it properly." Naomi kept her eyes down, continuing to mop. "Don't worry," Chloe said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The help isn't allowed to audition anyway, so you won't have to embarrass yourself by trying." Adrian's voice came from the back of the auditorium, firm and clear. "That's enough, Chloe." Both women turned. Adrian walked down the center aisle, his expression harder than Naomi had ever seen it. "Excuse me?" Chloe's smile faltered. "I said that's enough. Leave her alone." This time, his defense wasn't weak or casual. It was direct and unambiguous. Naomi felt something shift in her chest. Surprise, maybe, or the faintest hint of gratitude. Chloe's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "I was just joking." "No, you weren't." Adrian climbed onto the stage, positioning himself slightly between Chloe and Naomi. "Find somewhere else to practice your superiority complex." Chloe shot Naomi a venomous look before stalking off, her footsteps echoing through the empty auditorium. For a moment, neither Adrian nor Naomi spoke. Then Adrian turned to her, his expression softening. "Do you sing?" he asked quietly. Naomi's heart nearly stopped. "No." "Are you sure? Because I need to finish cleaning," Naomi interrupted, gripping her mop so tightly her knuckles went white. She moved away from him, putting distance between them, but Adrian followed, keeping his voice gentle. "I think you're the voice I heard. That night, near the maintenance wing. That was you, wasn't it?" Naomi felt panic rising in her throat. Her hands were shaking now, visibly trembling. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not trying to— You don't understand, Naomi snapped, and suddenly, all the fear and anger she'd been holding back came pouring out. You don't understand what it means to be the maid's daughter here. You get to make jokes about marriage and challenges, and it's all just fun for you. But people like me, we don't get to shine. We don't get to stand on stages. We get to clean them and then disappear. Her voice broke on the last word. Before Adrian could respond, she grabbed her mop and bucket and fled, leaving him standing alone on the stage. Adrian stood there for a long time after she left, her words echoing in his mind. He'd never thought about it from her perspective, how different their worlds were despite sharing the same campus. The weight of his privilege sat uncomfortably on his shoulders. That evening, when Naomi came home, she found her mother waiting with a serious expression. Amara held up a piece of sheet music, the Queen of the Night aria that Naomi had hidden under her pillow. "I was changing your sheets," Amara said quietly. "I found this." Naomi's stomach dropped. "Mom? Baby, you cannot risk losing everything because of a song." Amara's voice cracked with emotion. "Do you understand what could happen? If you fail, they'll mock you. If you succeed, they'll resent you. Either way, we could lose our place here." "It's not just a song to me," Naomi said, tears finally spilling over. "It's the only thing that makes me feel like I'm more than invisible. When I sing, I'm not the maid's daughter. I'm not someone to ignore or pity. I'm just me. The me I'm supposed to be." Amara pulled her daughter into her arms, both of them crying now. "I know, baby, I know. But the world doesn't care about supposed to be. It only cares about what is." They held each other in the small kitchen, the sheet music crumpled between them, while outside the sun set over the conservatory, where Naomi's voice remained unheard. Adrian couldn't stop thinking about Naomi's outburst. He wanted to understand her better, to figure out why her reaction had been so raw. So he did something he'd never done before. He started talking to the older staff members who'd been at the conservatory for years. Mrs. Patterson, who worked in the administrative office, remembered Naomi as a little girl. "Oh, she used to sing all the time," she told Adrian. "At church, at staff gatherings. Had the voice of an angel even then. But after her father left, must have been about 10 years ago, her mother pulled her away from everything. Said it was to keep her safe, keep her focused. Haven't heard that girl sing publicly since." The information sat heavy in Adrian's chest. Naomi had been silenced by circumstance, by fear, by a world that had taught her to make herself small. A few days later, Adrian was scheduled to rehearse a piece for his private lessons. When he arrived at the practice room, he couldn't find his sheet music anywhere. He searched his bag 3 times, growing increasingly frustrated. "Looking for this?" He turned to find Naomi standing in the doorway, holding his music. It looked slightly crumpled, as if it had been retrieved from somewhere it shouldn't have been. "Where did you find that?" "In the trash can outside," Naomi said, setting it carefully on the piano. Someone must have thought it was garbage. Adrian knew it hadn't been an accident. Someone, probably one of the students who resented his casual attitude toward music, had thrown it away on purpose. "Thank you," he said, meaning it more than she probably realized. Naomi nodded, already turning to leave. "Wait," Adrian said. She paused, and he saw her reflection in the polished lid of the piano. "I'm sorry. For the other day. For not understanding. You don't need to apologize." "I think I do." He turned to face her properly. "You were right. I've been treating this place, this opportunity, like a joke because I was afraid to actually try. But you'd give anything to have what I'm wasting." Naomi met his eyes, and for the first time she didn't look away immediately. "Yeah, I would." The honesty in her voice cut through all the pretense and social barriers between them. For a moment, they were just 2 people who understood each other. Then Naomi left, And Adrian sat down at the piano with his recovered sheet music, thinking about her with an intensity that surprised him. Late that night, Naomi stood before the audition sign-up sheet that had been posted outside Dr. Hale's office. The hallway was deserted, the building quiet except for the distant hum of heating vents. She'd walked past this poster a dozen times over the past week, always telling herself she was just looking, not actually considering it. Now, standing here alone in the dim light, she reached out and tore off one of the registration slips at the bottom. Her hands trembled as she folded it and slipped it into her pocket. She hadn't decided yet. She told herself that. The slip was just paper. It didn't mean anything until she turned it in. But as she walked home through the dark campus, feeling the weight of that small piece of paper in her pocket, she knew she was lying to herself. The choice had already been made, somewhere deep inside where fear couldn't quite reach. She was going to sing. And everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. The night before, Naomi had held that registration slip in trembling hands, unable to sleep. Now at 5 in the morning, she crept through the empty conservatory like a ghost. The hallway outside Dr. Hale's office was silent, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. The sign-up sheet hung on the bulletin board, already filled with dozens of names, confident signatures in bold ink, each one belonging to someone who had every right to be there. Naomi pulled out her slip and a pen. Her hand hovered over the last available line at the very bottom of the page. If she wrote her name, there would be no taking it back. Everyone would see it. Everyone would know. She pressed the pen to paper and wrote quickly, barely legible, Naomi Carter. Then she fled before anyone could see her, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might faint. Hours later, when Dr. Hale arrived at his office with his morning coffee, he reviewed the audition list. His eyes traveled down the names, all familiar students from prominent families or scholarship recipients, with impressive backgrounds. Then he reached the bottom and paused. Naomi Carter. He knew that name, though not as a student. Amara Carter's daughter. The girl who cleaned the practice rooms. Dr. Hale removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly, thinking. Then he carefully placed the list in his folder without comment. If she wanted to audition, she had every right to. Talent didn't care about job titles. Across campus, Adrian threw himself into practice with an intensity that surprised even his instructors. For the first time in years, he wasn't going through the motions. He worked on his breathing, his posture, his vocal technique. His accompanist, Professor Mills, noticed the change immediately. "What's gotten into you, Kingsley?" Mills asked after an especially focused session. Adrian didn't have a simple answer. He kept thinking about that mysterious voice, about Naomi's words on the stage, about how he'd been wasting opportunities she would give anything to have. He wanted to be worthy of something, even if he wasn't quite sure what. "Just trying to be better," Adrian said finally. Mills smiled. "Well, it's working. Keep this up and you might actually surprise people at auditions." Adrian practiced the Queen of the Night aria, transposed for his range, until his throat ached. He wasn't just doing it for the showcase anymore. He was doing it for the girl with the voice he couldn't forget, even if he didn't know who she was. Meanwhile, Naomi's secret practice sessions became increasingly desperate. She couldn't use the official practice rooms, they were all booked, and besides, she wasn't technically a student. So she found other places, hidden corners of the conservatory where sound traveled but people didn't. She sang in the emergency stairwell near the east wing, where the concrete walls created a natural echo chamber. She practiced in the industrial laundry room late at night, her voice soaring over the rumble of washing machines. She even snuck into the chapel on the edge of campus at dawn, letting her voice fill the empty space with its vaulted ceilings. Each location gave her voice a different quality. The stairwell made it powerful and resonant. The laundry room taught her to project over noise. The chapel added a spiritual, almost otherworldly dimension. Without meaning to, Naomi was training in ways no practice room could have provided. Her voice grew stronger, clearer, more controlled. The impossible notes became second nature. She wasn't just preparing for an audition anymore. She was becoming something extraordinary. But campus whispers had already started. Chloe Hamilton had arrived early to practice one morning and noticed the audition list. She scanned it with the casual arrogance of someone who assumed she'd already won, then stopped dead at the bottom. Naomi Carter. Chloe knew exactly who that was. The quiet girl who pushed cleaning carts and avoided eye contact. The maid's daughter who had no business even thinking about the showcase. By lunchtime, Chloe had told 3 people. By dinner, the entire conservatory knew. The reactions ranged from amused disbelief to outright mockery. "Did you hear? The cleaning girl signed up for auditions." One student laughed in the cafeteria. "That's actually sad," another responded. "Someone should tell her this isn't a charity." Naomi heard every whisper, felt every stare. She kept her head down, continued her work, and tried to ignore the burning humiliation in her chest. But it was getting harder. In the dining hall during lunch, Chloe decided to make the mockery public. She stood up at her table, strategically positioned in the center of the room where everyone could hear, and spoke loudly enough to carry. "I just think it's adorable," Chloe announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The maid's kid thinks she can sing Mozart. Should we all bring her cleaning supplies as applause? You know, to make her feel at home on stage?" Laughter erupted around the cafeteria. Naomi, sitting alone at a corner table with the other service staff's children, felt her face burn with shame. She stared at her tray, willing herself to disappear. Then Adrian's chair scraped loudly against the floor. He stood up at his table across the room, his jaw set. Everyone fell silent, watching. Adrian Kingsley rarely got involved in student drama. He was known for staying above it all, detached and amused. But right now, he looked anything but amused. "Chloe," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Shut up." Gasps rippled through the cafeteria. You could have heard a pin drop. "Excuse me?" Chloe's face flushed with surprise and anger. "You heard me. Shut up." Adrian walked toward her table, his expression hard. "You're a good singer, Chloe, maybe even a great one. But you know what? Talent doesn't give you the right to be cruel, and mocking someone for having the courage to try something you've had handed to you your entire life just makes you small." The cafeteria was completely silent now. Every eye was on them. "She signed up for an audition," Adrian continued. "Just like you. Just like all of us. If you're so confident in your abilities, her name on that list shouldn't threaten you this much." Chloe's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked around at her friends, expecting support, but they all avoided her eyes. Adrian turned and looked directly at Naomi. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for the first time, Naomi didn't look away. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or solidarity. She gave him the smallest nod, and a flicker of respect showed in her expression. Then Adrian walked out of the cafeteria, leaving Chloe humiliated and the entire student body buzzing with shock. Naomi left quickly after that, not wanting to become the center of more attention. But as she pushed her cart down the empty hallway, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A tiny spark of hope that, maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone in this. That night at home, the fight with her mother exploded. Amara had heard about the audition list from other staff members. She was waiting when Naomi walked through the door, her expression a mixture of fear and anger. "Tell me it's not true," Amara said. "Tell me you didn't put your name on that list." Naomi set down her bag slowly. "I did." "How could you?" Amara's voice rose, trembling. After everything I told you. After everything I've done to keep us safe here. Safe? Naomi's own anger flared. Is this safe, Mom? Working ourselves to exhaustion while everyone treats us like we're invisible? Never speaking up, never trying, never being anything more than what they expect. Yes, Amara shouted. Yes, that is safe. Because the alternative is being humiliated, rejected, cast out. I'm already humiliated, Naomi screamed back, tears streaming down her face. Every single day I'm humiliated. I clean up after people who don't even look at me. I listen to them practice music I could sing better while I scrub their floors. I have this thing inside me, Mom, this voice, and you're asking me to bury it forever because you're afraid. I'm afraid because I love you. Amara was crying now too. I'm afraid because I know what this world does to people like us when we forget our place. This is why I warned you. Amara continued, her voice breaking. They will never let you stand with them, baby. Never. And when they tear you down, and they will, we'll lose everything. I'm not living my life in fear because of what might happen. Naomi's voice cracked with emotion. I can't, Mom. I can't keep making myself smaller to make other people comfortable. Not anymore. They stood on opposite sides of their tiny kitchen, both sobbing. The words they'd been holding back for years finally released into the space between them. If you do this, Amara said quietly, there's no going back. I know, Naomi whispered. But I have to try. Amara closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Then she pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace, holding her like she was 5 years old again. They stood there for a long time, both understanding that something fundamental had shifted between them. Naomi had made her choice, and now they would both have to live with whatever came next. The following afternoon, Naomi was summoned to Dr. Hale's office. Her heart raced as she climbed the stairs to the administrative wing. This was it. They were going to tell her she couldn't audition, that her name shouldn't have been on the list. But when she entered, Dr. Hale simply gestured for her to sit. Miss Carter, he said, his tone neutral, but not unkind. I wanted to speak with you about your audition. I know I'm not a student, Naomi said quickly. But the rules don't technically say. You're absolutely right, Dr. Hale interrupted. The showcase is open to anyone affiliated with the conservatory. That includes you. Your audition stands. Naomi blinked, surprised. Really? Really? Dr. Hale leaned back in his chair, studying her with sharp, intelligent eyes. However, I feel obligated to warn you. There are powerful people watching this showcase closely. Board members, donors, parents. Some of them won't be happy to see your name on that stage. Because I'm the Maid's daughter. Because of exactly that, he confirmed without sugarcoating it. I can't protect you from what they might say or do, but I can promise you a fair audition. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. Naomi felt the weight of his words settle over her. This wasn't just about singing anymore. This was about challenging every assumption people had about who belonged in spaces like this. Thank you, she said quietly. Dr. Hale nodded. Don't make me regret believing in you. As Naomi left his office, she didn't feel reassured. She felt terrified. But there was no turning back now. Over the next few days, an unexpected ally emerged. Mrs. Lyle, the elderly piano accompanist who had been at the conservatory for 30 years, approached Naomi one evening. I heard you're auditioning, Mrs. Lyle said, her weathered face kind. Naomi nodded, waiting for the criticism. Instead, Mrs. Lyle smiled. Good. This place needs shaking up. She paused, then added softly, You remind me of my daughter. She had a voice like yours, special, pure. She never got the chance to chase it. Life got in the way. I won't let that happen to you if I can help it. And so, in secret, Mrs. Lyle began coaching Naomi. They met in unused practice rooms during off hours. Mrs. Lyle was demanding, pushing Naomi harder than anyone ever had. Breath control, she'd snap. You're letting the phrase collapse. Again. The high F isn't about force, she'd correct. It's about placement and support. Again. Under Mrs. Lyle's guidance, Naomi's already impressive voice became truly extraordinary. The older woman had decades of experience and knowledge that transformed Naomi's raw talent into refined artistry. You have the gift, Mrs. Lyle told her one evening, but talent will get you on that stage. Strength will keep you there. Never forget that. Naomi practiced until her throat was raw, until her muscles memorized every breath, until the aria felt like an extension of her own heartbeat. The night before auditions, Naomi barely slept. She lay in bed, alternating between terror and determination, while her mother sat in the kitchen, unable to sleep either. At 2 a.m, Naomi found her mother at the table with a cup of cold tea. "Can't sleep either?" Naomi asked softly. Amara shook her head. Then, after a long silence, she reached across and took her daughter's hand. "If you're going to do this," Amara whispered, "then go all the way. Don't hold back. Don't make yourself small up there. Sing like you do when you think no one's listening." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so scared, Mom." "I know, baby. I'm scared too." Amara squeezed her hand. "But I'm also proud. I should have said that first. I'm so proud of you." They held each other in the dim kitchen light, gathering strength for what was coming. The next day arrived with cruel clarity. The auditorium filled with students, faculty, and invited guests. The judges sat in the front row. Dr. Hale, 2 voice professors, and a renowned opera director visiting from New York. The pressure was suffocating. Chloe performed first. She'd specifically requested the opening slot, wanting to set an impossible standard. And technically, her performance was flawless. She hit every note with precision, executed every trill perfectly, displayed perfect posture and technique. But there was something missing. The notes were right, but they felt empty. More like a demonstration of skill than an expression of feeling. Still, the applause was thunderous. Chloe took her bow with a triumphant smile. Adrian went next. His performance surprised everyone, including himself. He'd worked harder for this audition than anything else in his life, and it showed. His voice was strong, emotional, genuinely moving. The audience gave him a standing ovation, and he could see his mother Evelyn in the back row, her expression unreadable but her posture less rigid than usual. Then came several other students, each competent but forgettable after Chloe's technical perfection and Adrian's emotional performance. Then the stage manager called, "Naomi Carter." The whispers started immediately, rippling through the auditorium like wildfire. "That's the cleaning girl. Is this a joke? Why is she even here?" Naomi stood in the wings, her entire body shaking. She could hear every whisper, feel every judgmental stare waiting for her. Mrs. Lyle stood beside her, gripping her shoulders. "Remember," Mrs. Lyle whispered fiercely, "you don't sing for them. You sing for yourself. For every dream you've ever had to hide, you sing for truth." Naomi nodded, unable to speak. Then she stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The audience was a dark mass of judgment. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, most of them skeptical or hostile. She found Adrian in the crowd. He was sitting forward, his expression stunned, as if he'd just realized something. Dr. Hale gestured for quiet, though the whispers continued. Naomi walked to center stage, her cleaning uniform traded for a simple black dress her mother had altered for her. She looked small, terrified, completely out of place. Then the accompaniment began. Naomi closed her eyes, and as Mrs. Lyle had taught her, she found her center. That quiet place inside where the music lived. She thought of her father's last embrace, her mother's fears, Adrian's defense. Every moment she'd been told to be quiet. She opened her mouth. The first note that emerged was so pure, so crystalline, so impossibly perfect that the entire auditorium fell instantly, completely silent. Even the people who had been whispering stopped mid-word, their mouths hanging open. Adrian shot upright in his seat. It was her, the voice he'd been searching for, the voice from the vents. It had been Naomi all along. On the judges' panel, Dr. Hale leaned forward so quickly his glasses nearly fell off. The opera director from New York grabbed the armrest, his eyes wide. The voice professors exchanged looks of pure astonishment. In the back row, Evelyn Kingsley lowered her phone slowly, her expression transforming from disinterest to unwilling fascination. Naomi continued singing, and with each phrase, something extraordinary happened. Her fear began to dissolve. Her body, which had been rigid with terror, slowly opened. Her voice, already stunning, seemed to expand and fill every corner of the massive space. She wasn't just singing the aria, she was embodying it. The queen of the night's rage, pain, and power flowed through her as if she'd been born to perform this exact piece at this exact moment. In the audience, people forgot to breathe. Chloe sat frozen, her face drained of color. This wasn't possible. The maid's daughter couldn't be better than her. It violated everything she believed about the natural order of the world. But she was. As Naomi reached the aria's infamous high F sequence, the notes that professional sopranos struggled with, she didn't just hit them. She soared through them with such ease, such control, such shimmering beauty that several people in the audience began to cry. Adrian felt tears on his own cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. He was watching someone transform right before his eyes. This wasn't the quiet girl who pushed cleaning carts. This was a force of nature, raw and powerful, and absolutely undeniable. Naomi's performance became something beyond technical skill. Fragments of memory flashed through her mind as she sang, her father teaching her first lullaby, her mother's warning, the years of silence, the secret practice sessions, all of it pouring into the music. Her voice carried not just notes, but her entire life story. Every moment of pain and hope compressed into 3 minutes of transcendent sound. The judges weren't just listening anymore. They were experiencing something rare, the kind of performance that reminded them why they'd devoted their lives to music in the first place. As Naomi hit the final, impossible high note and held it, crystal clear and unwavering, the entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath with her. Then silence. Complete. Total silence. For 5 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The auditorium felt frozen in time. Then, like a dam breaking, the audience erupted. People leaped to their feet. Students who had mocked her hours before were crying and cheering. Faculty members applauded until their hands hurt. Even some of the conservative board members in the back rose slowly, unable to deny what they'd just witnessed. The applause was deafening, thunderous, absolutely overwhelming. Naomi stood at center stage, trembling violently, tears streaming down her face. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The thing she'd dreamed about in secret for years had finally happened, and it was more terrifying and exhilarating than she'd ever imagined. Her legs began to give out. The adrenaline that had carried her through the performance was crashing, and suddenly she couldn't stand anymore. Adrian was moving before he consciously decided to. He jumped from his seat and rushed toward the stage, reaching her just as she began to fall. He caught her hand, steadying her, and when she looked at him, he saw that he was crying too. "That was you," he said, his voice barely audible over the continuing applause. "All along. That voice I heard. It was you." Naomi couldn't speak. She could only nod, overwhelmed by everything. The performance, the applause, his presence, all of it. Adrian looked at her with something like awe. She wasn't the quiet girl with the mop anymore. She wasn't someone to pity or protect. She was a force A talent, something truly extraordinary, and he had been too blind to see it until now. "You were amazing," he whispered. Before Naomi could respond, Dr. Hale stepped up to the microphone at the judge's table. His hand was shaking slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, and his voice cracked with emotion. He cleared his throat and tried again. "In 30 years of teaching, I have heard many talented singers, but what we just witnessed—" He trailed off, shaking his head in wonder. "Naomi Carter," he said firmly, "is not just a finalist for the Winter Showcase. She is your headliner. She will open and close the performance." The auditorium exploded again, this time with mixed reactions, enthusiastic cheers from most, but also shocked murmurs from others. The headliner was the most prestigious position, reserved for the conservatory's absolute best, and they'd just given it to the Maid's daughter. Chloe remained frozen in her seat, her perfect mask finally cracking. This couldn't be happening. Evelyn Kingsley watched from the back row, her expression unreadable. But her eyes stayed fixed on Naomi with an intensity that suggested wheels were turning in her calculating mind. Adrian still stood on the stage beside Naomi, both of them caught in the chaos of applause and controversy swirling around them. And Naomi, overwhelmed, terrified, triumphant, understood that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to comprehend. The quiet girl who cleaned practice rooms was gone. In her place stood Naomi Carter, the voice that had silenced an entire auditorium. And the real battle was just beginning. The audition results hit the conservatory like a shockwave. By the next morning, Naomi's name was on everyone's lips, some spoken with admiration, others with barely concealed resentment. She arrived for her morning cleaning shift to find the hallways buzzing with conversation that stopped abruptly whenever she appeared. Some students nodded respectfully as she passed. Others turned away, whispering behind their hands. A few even smiled at her genuinely, congratulating her softly. But the divide was clear. Naomi's triumph had split the conservatory into camps, and not everyone was celebrating. In the faculty lounge, the debate was equally heated. Some professors praised Dr. Hale's decision as bold and merit-based. Others worried about the optics, the precedent, what the donors would say. The conservatory had always been an elite institution, and Naomi's ascension challenged that foundation in ways that made people uncomfortable. "She's incredibly talented," one professor admitted, "but talent isn't the only consideration here. We have to think about our reputation. Our reputation should be built on recognizing excellence wherever we find it," another countered. The arguments continued, but Naomi heard none of them. She was too busy trying to process what had happened. She'd done the impossible, sung her way onto the biggest stage of her life, but instead of feeling triumphant, she felt exposed, like a spotlight had been turned on her that she couldn't escape. That afternoon, Evelyn Kingsley summoned Dr. Hale to a private meeting in the conservatory's administrative conference room. She arrived precisely on time, dressed impeccably, her expression cool and controlled. "Lawrence," she began without preamble, "we need to discuss yesterday's decision." Dr. Hale set down his coffee carefully. "If you're referring to Naomi Carter, the decision was based purely on merit. Her audition was the strongest by a considerable margin." "I'm not questioning her talent," Evelyn said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm questioning the wisdom of making her the headliner. The Winter Showcase isn't just a student recital. It's a fundraising event. Our donors expect a certain standard. And Naomi doesn't meet that standard." Dr. Hale's voice was dangerously quiet. "She's the daughter of our kitchen staff," Evelyn said bluntly. "That may not matter to you in your artistic bubble, but it matters to the people who keep this institution running. I've already received calls from 3 board members expressing concern." "Concern about what, exactly?" That talent might not correlate with social class? Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Don't be naive, Lawrence. You know how this looks. People will say we're making a political statement, or worse, that the audition was rigged because of your friendship with Adrian. Dr. Hale stood abruptly, his usual calm demeanor cracking. I have served this conservatory for 23 years. My integrity has never been questioned. And I will not demote a student. Yes, I said student, because powerful people are uncomfortable with where her mother works. Then you're risking the funding we need to keep this place open, Evelyn said coldly. Several donors have already hinted they might. It says him withhold contributions if we continue down this path. Then perhaps we need different donors. Dr. Hale's voice was firm. Naomi Carter earned that spot. She will perform. If that costs us money from people who value social status over artistic merit, then so be it. Evelyn stood, her composure intact despite the rejection. I hope you don't come to regret this decision, Lawrence, for all our sakes. She left without another word, but the threat hung in the air long after she'd gone. Meanwhile, Adrian had spent the entire night replaying Naomi's audition in his mind. He couldn't believe he'd been so blind. The voice he'd been obsessed with finding had been right there all along, hidden behind cleaning carts and lowered eyes. Now he understood why she'd been so angry when he'd asked if she sang. She'd been protecting something precious, something the world had taught her to hide. He found her later that afternoon in the supply closet, restocking cleaning materials. She was alone, humming quietly to herself, and the sound made his chest ache. Naomi, he said softly from the doorway. She jumped, nearly dropping a bottle of floor cleaner. You scared me. Sorry, I wanted to talk to you. About yesterday. Naomi's expression closed off immediately. What about it? You were incredible. I knew the voice was special, but I didn't know it was yours. I didn't think the cleaning girl could sing like that. Naomi's voice was sharper than she intended. That's not what I meant, Adrian said quickly. I didn't see you. Really see you. And I should have. Naomi studied his face, looking for the joke or the pity, but found only sincerity. Still, she couldn't quite trust it. His world was so different from hers that his kindness felt like something temporary, something that would evaporate once the novelty wore off. I need to finish restocking, she said, turning back to her work. Adrian wanted to say more, but he could see she was building walls again, so he just nodded and left, though he looked back once before disappearing around the corner. That evening, the first attack came. Chloe had spent the entire day in a state of barely controlled rage. She'd practiced for months, perfected every technical detail, done everything right, and she'd lost to the maid's daughter. The humiliation was unbearable. In her dorm room, she met with two other senior vocalists, Jessica and Brandon, who were equally bitter about being overshadowed. Jessica had placed third, Brandon hadn't placed at all, and both felt Naomi's success had somehow stolen their opportunities. We need to do something, Chloe said, pacing her room. This is insane. She shouldn't even be allowed to compete, much less headline. What can we do? Jessica asked. Dr. Hale already made his decision. Then we change public opinion, Chloe said, a calculating look in her eyes. We remind everyone exactly who she is. Brandon pulled out his phone, already filming. I know where she keeps her cleaning supplies. 20 minutes later, they'd recorded a video tour of Naomi's locker in the custodial closet, her mop, her spray bottles, her stained work gloves. They edited it with mocking captions. Your winter showcase headliner, ladies and gentlemen. And, from cleaning toilets to center stage, what's wrong with this picture? They posted it on every student social media platform they could find. By midnight, it had been shared hundreds of times. Naomi woke up the next morning to her phone buzzing frantically. Notifications flooded her screen. Tags, comments, shares, all of them pointing to the video. Her hands shook as she watched it, seeing her work life reduced to a punchline, her achievement framed as a joke. The comments were brutal. This is what happens when we lower our standards. She should stick to what she knows, cleaning. Talent doesn't change where you come from. There were supportive comments, too, people defending her, but the cruel ones cut deeper. Naomi felt the walls closing in. She'd known this would happen, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. At the conservatory that day, the whispers were louder. Students snickered as she walked by. Even some teachers looked away, uncomfortable with the controversy. Naomi kept her head down, pushing her cart through the hallways like she was invisible again. But invisibility was no longer an option. At lunch, the cafeteria was packed as usual. Naomi sat alone at a corner table trying to eat while ignoring the stares and whispers. The video was playing on several students' phones, the mocking laughter carrying across the room. Adrian was sitting with his usual group when he saw the video for the first time. His face went dark with anger. "Who made this?" he demanded. Marcus, sitting beside him, shrugged uncomfortably. "Does it matter? It's already everywhere." Adrian stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. He walked directly to the center of the cafeteria, grabbed an empty chair and climbed onto it so everyone could see him. "Can I have everyone's attention?" he called out. The cafeteria slowly fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. Adrian pulled out his phone and held it up. "This video that's been going around, it's disgusting, and everyone who shared it should be ashamed." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Chloe, sitting at her usual table, went pale. Naomi Carter earned her spot through talent, period. Adrian continued, his voice strong and clear. She didn't get special treatment. She didn't cut corners. She sang better than anyone else. And the fact that some of you are trying to tear her down because of what her mother does for a living says a lot more about you than it does about her. He paused, letting his words sink in. Talent isn't defined by your parents' paycheck, or your last name, or what side of campus you live on. It's defined by what you can do. And what Naomi did yesterday, that was extraordinary. If you can't see that, then you don't deserve to be at a music conservatory. The silence that followed was deafening. Students looked at each other uncomfortably. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked away, embarrassed. Adrian climbed down from the chair and walked directly to Naomi's table. He sat down across from her, deliberately, publicly choosing her side. Naomi stared at him, tears in her eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Adrian said firmly. "I should have done it sooner." For the first time since the video appeared, Naomi felt like she could breathe. She wasn't alone in this fight anymore. But that evening, the battle came to her home. Amara had heard about the video from other staff members. When Naomi walked through the door, her mother was waiting, and the fear was back in her eyes. That terrible, suffocating fear that had controlled their lives for years. "This is exactly what I warned you about," Amara said, her voice shaking. "They're humiliating you. They're humiliating us, and it's only going to get worse. Mom, you need to withdraw," Amara said desperately. "Tell Dr. Hale you can't do it. We'll go back to how things were before." "I'm not withdrawing." Naomi's voice rose, matching her mother's intensity. "I'm not giving them that satisfaction." "This isn't about satisfaction. This is about survival." Amara's composure cracked completely. "Don't you understand? They will never let you stand with them. They will tear you apart, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. And I can't watch that happen to you. I'm not living my life in fear because of what might happen." Naomi screamed, and her voice cracked with all the emotion she'd been holding back. "I did the audition. I sang my heart out. I earned that spot. And I'm not going to apologize for it or hide from it because some people can't handle the fact that I'm good enough. It's not about being good enough." "Yes, it is." Naomi was crying now, the words pouring out. "It's always been about that. You've spent my whole life telling me to be quiet, to be small, to not draw attention. And I tried, Mom. I really tried. But I can't anymore. This voice I have, it's the only thing that's truly mine. And I won't bury it. Not for them. Not even for you. The silence that followed was absolute. Amara stared at her daughter, seeing for the first time not a child to protect, but a woman who had made her own choice. Then Amara's face crumpled, and she started sobbing. Naomi rushed forward, and they held each other in the middle of their tiny kitchen, both crying for different reasons. "I'm so scared," Amara whispered against her daughter's hair. "I'm so scared of what they'll do to you." "I'm scared too," Naomi admitted. "But I'm more scared of spending my whole life wondering what could have been." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other through the fear and the uncertainty, finding strength in the only certainty they had, each other. The next morning, Naomi was called to Dr. Hale's office. Her heart sank as she climbed the stairs. This was it. They were going to tell her the video had changed things, that the donors had complained, that she couldn't be headliner after all. But when she entered, Dr. Hale simply gestured for her to sit. "Miss Carter," he said, and his expression was kind but serious. "I want you to know that your position in the showcase has not changed. You are still the headliner." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you. However," Dr. Hale continued, "I need to be honest with you. There are powerful people who are not happy with this decision. Board members, donors, individuals who believe the conservatory should maintain certain traditions. I cannot protect you from what they might say or attempt to do." Naomi nodded, the relief already fading. "I understand. Do you?" Dr. Hale leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "Because this isn't just about one performance anymore. You've become a symbol, whether you wanted to or not. And symbols attract both devotion and hostility." "I just want to sing," Naomi said quietly. "I know. But unfortunately, it's bigger than that now." He paused, then added, "There will be pressure. On you, on me, on everyone involved. If you want to withdraw, no one would blame you." Naomi thought about her mother's tears, the cruel video, the whispers in the hallways. Then she thought about her voice filling that auditorium, the feeling of finally being seen, the look on Adrian's face when he'd defended her. "I'm not withdrawing," she said firmly. Dr. Hale smiled slightly. "Good. Then don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong on that stage. You earned it." As Naomi left his office, she felt the weight of what was coming settle on her shoulders. This was only the beginning. That afternoon, an unexpected lifeline appeared. Mrs. Lyle found Naomi practicing alone in one of the smaller rehearsal rooms and knocked gently on the door frame. "May I?" the elderly woman asked. Naomi nodded, and Mrs. Lyle came in, closing the door behind her. "I saw that horrible video," Mrs. Lyle said without preamble. "And I want you to know something. 30 years ago, my daughter auditioned for this very conservatory. She had a voice that could make angels weep. But she was turned away, not because she lacked talent, but because her father worked in a factory, and we couldn't afford the full tuition. They offered her a partial scholarship, but it wasn't enough." Mrs. Lyle's eyes grew distant with old pain. "She gave up music after that. Got a practical job, married young, had a family. She died 5 years ago, and I don't think she ever forgave herself for giving up. Every time I accompany a student now, I wonder what she could have been." Naomi felt tears building again. "You remind me so much of her," Mrs. Lyle continued. "The same pure tone, the same emotional depth. But you have something she never got, a real chance. And I will not let the same prejudice that destroyed her dream destroy yours. Not while I'm still breathing." "What can I do?" Naomi asked. "It feels like the whole world is against me." "Then you make yourself undeniable. Mrs. Lyle said fiercely. You practice until your voice is so powerful, so flawless, so absolutely magnificent that no one, not the board members, not the donors, not anyone, can dismiss you. Talent got you here. Excellence will keep you here. From that day forward, Mrs. Lyle trained Naomi with ruthless intensity. They worked on breath control until Naomi could hold notes that seemed impossible. They practiced emotional phrasing until every word carried weight. They refined her stage presence until she commanded attention simply by standing still. Naomi's voice, already extraordinary, became something transcendent. But while Naomi was training, Adrian Kingsley was strategizing. She'd noticed Adrian's increasing attention toward Naomi, the way he watched her in hallways, the way he'd defended her publicly. And she'd misinterpreted it entirely. She thought Naomi was manipulating Adrian, using her Cinderella story to gain his sympathy and, through him, access to the Kingsley family's influence. Evelyn wouldn't allow it. She invited Chloe's parents, wealthy donors who sat on the conservatory's board, to a private dinner at the Kingsley estate. Over expensive wine and carefully prepared courses, she laid her groundwork. This Naomi situation is troubling, Evelyn said casually. I worry about the message we're sending to families who have supported this institution for generations. Chloe's father, Richard Hamilton, nodded gravely. Chloe was devastated. She's been preparing for years. And she performed beautifully, Evelyn assured him. Technically perfect. But Dr. Hale seems to have prioritized novelty over consistency. Are you suggesting the decision was flawed? Mrs. Hamilton asked carefully. I'm suggesting, Evelyn said, choosing her words precisely, that perhaps Chloe deserves another opportunity to prove herself. If she performs at the showcase, not as headliner of course, but in a prominent role, it would send the message that we value our dedicated students. She didn't say what everyone understood. That elevating Chloe would diminish Naomi's moment, would frame the showcase as a competition rather than a celebration of Naomi's unprecedented talent. The Hamiltons left that evening with renewed purpose. Chloe would get her moment, one way or another. But Chloe had her own plans. She'd spent days seething, plotting, looking for weaknesses in Naomi's armor. Then she discovered something useful, Naomi's practice schedule. The girl was predictable, always using the same rehearsal rooms during the same time slots. Chloe hatched a plan. If she could prove Naomi was inconsistent, that her audition was a fluke, then maybe Dr. Hale would reconsider. She started following Naomi, secretly recording her practice sessions on her phone. Finally, she captured it. A moment where Naomi, exhausted from hours of practice, hit a difficult passage slightly off-key. Her voice cracked for just a moment before she corrected herself and continued. Chloe immediately went to work editing the clip. She isolated that one imperfect moment, looped it several times to make it seem like Naomi struggled repeatedly, and added a caption. The amazing headliner can't even hit the notes consistently. How much longer are we pretending this was merit-based? She sent it to 10 people. Within hours, it had spread to hundreds. The damage was immediate. Students who had been on the fence about Naomi began questioning her abilities. Faculty members worried about the showcase becoming a disaster. Even some of Naomi's supporters started to doubt. Naomi saw the video during her afternoon shift and felt her confidence crumble. That one moment of weakness, captured and weaponized, made her feel exposed all over again. What if she wasn't good enough? What if the audition had been a fluke, a moment of luck she couldn't replicate? Her hands shook as she pushed her cleaning cart through the hallways, and for the first time since the audition, she seriously considered quitting. That evening, she found Adrian waiting outside the supply closet. He looked furious. This video, he said without preamble. It's edited. I can prove it. Naomi shook her head wearily. Does it matter? Everyone believes it anyway. It matters because it's a lie. Adrian pulled out his own phone, showing her the metadata from the clip. The audio has been manipulated, and I think I know who did it. Chloe, almost certainly. Adrian's jaw was tight with anger. I'm going to Dr. Hale. This is sabotage. But Naomi grabbed his arm. Don't. What? Why? Because even if you prove it's fake, people will still doubt me. They want to doubt me. It gives them permission to keep things the way they've always been. Naomi's voice was hollow with exhaustion. I can't fight every battle, Adrian. I don't have the energy. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the toll this was all taking. The girl who had stood so tall on that audition stage was being worn down piece by piece. Then let me fight some of them for you, he said quietly. Naomi met his eyes and saw something there she hadn't expected. Genuine care, not pity or guilt, but actual concern for her as a person. It broke through her defenses in a way nothing else could. Why do you care so much? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Adrian hesitated, then said simply, because you're the most real person I've met in this place, and I'm tired of watching real things get destroyed by fake people. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not quite romance. The circumstances were too intense, too complicated for that. But a connection, a partnership. They were allies now, in a war neither of them had asked for, but both were determined to win. Okay, Naomi said finally. Show Dr. Hale the proof, but I need to be there too. Adrian nodded. Tomorrow. We'll do it together. As they stood in the dim hallway, two people from completely different worlds united by a single truth, that talent and worth had nothing to do with where you came from. They both understood that the real battle was just beginning. And this time, Naomi wouldn't face it alone. The next morning, Adrian and Naomi walked into Dr. Hale's office together. The director looked up from his paperwork, surprised to see them as a united front, and gestured for them to sit. This should be interesting, he said dryly. Adrian pulled out his phone and showed Dr. Hale the edited video, then displayed the metadata proving the audio manipulation. Chloe Hamilton recorded Naomi during a private practice session without consent, then edited the recording to make her sound inconsistent. It's sabotage. Dr. Hale's expression darkened as he reviewed the evidence. This is serious. Recording someone without permission violates our code of conduct, and deliberately spreading false information about another student. There's more, Naomi added quietly. The first video, of my cleaning supplies, that was Chloe too. She had help from Jessica Andrews and Brandon Foster. Dr. Hale removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes wearily. I'll handle this. They'll face disciplinary action. But Naomi, I need you to understand something. Punishing them won't change how some people feel about you being headliner. I know, Naomi said, but at least the truth will be out there. After they left, Dr. Hale made several calls. By that afternoon, Chloe, Jessica, and Brandon were summoned to a formal disciplinary hearing. The evidence was undeniable and the consequences were swift. All three were suspended from the conservatory for the remainder of the semester, effective immediately. They would not perform in the winter showcase. Chloe's face went white when the verdict was announced. You're ruining my future over one video. You attempted to ruin another student's reputation through deception, Dr. Hale said coldly. You're fortunate we're not expelling you entirely. Dismissed. Chloe left his office in tears, but they were tears of rage rather than remorse. In her mind, she hadn't done anything wrong. She'd simply exposed what everyone was thinking. That Naomi didn't belong, that this whole situation was a mistake. But the damage to Chloe's own reputation was severe. By evening, everyone knew what she'd done. Students who had shared her videos felt complicit in the sabotage. Faculty members who had questioned Naomi's placement now felt ashamed of their doubts. The tide of opinion shifted again, this time decisively in Naomi's favor. Yet just as things seemed to stabilize, Dr. Hale received the news that changed everything. A national arts network had reached out. They wanted to broadcast the Winter Showcase live across the country. It would reach millions of viewers, showcase the conservatory to potential students nationwide, and represent a massive opportunity for everyone involved, including Naomi. When Dr. Hale announced this during the mandatory showcase meeting, the rehearsal hall erupted in excited chatter. This wasn't just a school performance anymore. It was a national event. Naomi felt the air leave her lungs. National television, millions of people. The pressure that had already felt crushing suddenly became almost unbearable. After the meeting, she found herself hyperventilating in the women's restroom. Mrs. Lyle discovered her there, sitting on the floor with her head between her knees. "I can't do this," Naomi gasped. "It's too much, too many people. What if I fail in front of the entire country?" Mrs. Lyle sat down beside her on the cold tile floor, unconcerned about her dignity. "Let me tell you something about fear, child. Fear doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you understand what's at stake." "That doesn't help," Naomi said weakly. "Listen to me." Mrs. Lyle's voice was firm. "You've been training for this your entire life, even when you didn't know it. Every song you sang in secret, every moment you practiced alone. It was all preparing you for this. You are ready. But you have to believe that. What if I don't? Then you fake it until you do." Mrs. Lyle smiled slightly. "Confidence is just fear that's learned to take a breath and step forward anyway." Over the next 2 weeks, the rehearsals intensified. The conservatory brought in television crews to set up cameras and lighting. The auditorium was transformed into a broadcast studio with professional sound equipment and multiple camera angles. Everything felt bigger, more official, more terrifying. Naomi rehearsed the full aria with the orchestra for the first time, and even the seasoned musicians were awestruck. The conductor, Maestro Chen, paused repeatedly during their first run-through, not because of mistakes, but because he was genuinely moved by what he was hearing. "Miss Carter," he said during a break, "in 40 years of conducting, I have heard perhaps 3 sopranos who could truly master this piece. You are the 4th. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." His words helped, but they also added weight. 3 sopranos in 40 years. That meant if she failed, it would be spectacular and very public. Adrian attended every rehearsal he could, watching from the seats. He wasn't performing in the showcase anymore. After being named headliner, Naomi would open and close the performance. And Adrian had volunteered to step back so other students could have spots. But he couldn't stay away. Watching her rehearse had become the best part of his day. One evening, after a particularly intense session, he found her sitting alone on the stage, staring out at the empty seats that would soon be filled with thousands of people and countless cameras. "You're going to be amazing," he said, sitting beside her. "You don't know that," Naomi replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Yes, I do. I've heard you sing a dozen times now. You get better every time." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm proud to know you." Naomi turned to look at him, really look at him, and saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. This wasn't just friendship or alliance anymore. Something deeper had been growing between them, something neither of them had quite acknowledged. "Adrian." But before she could finish, a stage manager called out that they needed to clear the auditorium for the night. The moment passed, unfinished, but not forgotten. Meanwhile, Adrian Kingsley had been watching these developments with growing frustration. Naomi hadn't crumbled under pressure. The discipline hearing had backfired, making Chloe look petty and vindictive. And Adrian's attachment to the girl was becoming increasingly obvious and concerning. She decided it was time for a more direct approach. Evelyn arranged to meet Naomi Carter privately, inviting her to the estate under the pretense of discussing catering arrangements for the post-showcase reception. Amara arrived nervous, dressed in her best work clothes, not understanding why Mrs. Kingsley would want to meet with her personally. Evelyn was civil, but cold. "Mrs. Carter, I wanted to speak with you mother to mother." Amara's anxiety spiked. "Is something wrong?" "That depends on your perspective." Evelyn poured tea neither of them would drink. "Your daughter is very talented, but I worry that this sudden attention, the showcase, the television broadcast, my son's interest, might be setting her up for disappointment." "Naomi earned her spot fairly," Amara said carefully. "I'm not disputing that. But the world beyond this conservatory can be cruel, especially to people who rise above their station too quickly. The press will investigate her background. They'll ask questions about her family, her circumstances. It could become quite uncomfortable for both of you." Amara's hands tightened in her lap. She understood what Evelyn was really saying. "Back down, pull your daughter out, return to your place." "With all respect, Mrs. Kingsley," Amara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My daughter has spent her whole life being uncomfortable so that other people could be comfortable. I think it's someone else's turn." Evelyn's expression hardened. "I hope you don't come to regret that attitude." "I already regret 17 years of the opposite attitude," Amara replied. "At least this way. My daughter knows I believe in her." She left before Evelyn could respond, her heart pounding but her spine straight. When she got home, she told Naomi about the meeting. Instead of fear, she saw pride in her daughter's eyes. "You stood up to her," Naomi said, amazed. "I learned from the best," Amara replied, pulling her daughter into an embrace. As the showcase date approached, Naomi's anxiety reached a fever pitch. The night before the performance, she couldn't sleep. She paced her small bedroom, practicing phrases, doubting everything. At 2 in the morning, she finally broke down crying from sheer exhaustion and fear. Amara heard her and came in, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Baby, talk to me." "What if I freeze?" Naomi whispered. "What if I get out there and nothing comes out? What if everyone's right? What if I don't belong?" Amara took her daughter's face in her hands. "You listen to me. Tomorrow night, millions of people will hear you sing, and some of them will be little girls like you were, little girls who think their voices don't matter because of where they come from. You're not just singing for yourself anymore. You're singing for all of them. That's so much pressure." "No, baby. That's purpose." Amara smiled through her own tears. "You don't sing for the people who doubt you. You sing for the little girl you used to be, who needed someone to show her it was possible." Naomi clung to her mother, drawing strength from words she desperately needed to hear. The day of the showcase arrived with brutal clarity. The conservatory buzzed with controlled chaos, television crews checking equipment, stage managers coordinating timing, performers running through last-minute rehearsals. The energy was electric and terrifying. Naomi arrived early, her hands shaking as she signed in backstage. The dressing rooms were filled with students in formal wear, nervous energy bouncing off every surface. She found her assigned space, a small area with a mirror and costume rack, and tried to steady her breathing. Chloe appeared in the doorway. Naomi's body tensed immediately, but Chloe's expression wasn't hostile. It was something more complicated. Shame, maybe, or resignation. "I know I'm not supposed to be here," Chloe said quietly. I wanted to say something. If this is another, I'm sorry." The words came out strained but genuine. "I was cruel. I was jealous. And I tried to destroy you because I couldn't handle losing to someone I thought I was better than." Naomi stared at her, surprised. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're about to sing on national television, and I don't want you going out there thinking everyone hates you. Some of us are just scared of what you represent." Chloe's voice cracked. "You didn't play by the rules we all learned. You weren't supposed to be able to compete with us. and you won anyway. That's terrifying for people like me, who've built their whole identity on being special. I never wanted to take anything from you, Naomi said. I know. That's what makes it worse. Chloe gave a sad smile. Good luck out there. I mean it. She left before Naomi could respond, leaving behind a strange sense of closure. But the day's surprises weren't over. An hour before showtime, Naomi discovered a problem. Her performance shoes, the ones she'd carefully broken in and practiced in for weeks, were damaged. Someone had cut partway through the heel of one shoe, not enough to be immediately obvious, but enough that it would snap if she put her full weight on it during performance. Naomi's heart sank. This was sabotage, but there was no time to figure out who or why. She only had 60 minutes before she went on. For a moment, panic overwhelmed her. Then she took a breath, remembering Mrs. Lyle's words. Fear that learns to step forward. She grabbed duct tape from a stagehand and carefully, meticulously reinforced the damaged heel. It wasn't pretty, but it would hold. She tested it gently. The repair was solid. It would work. She stood taller, straightened her dress, and decided she wouldn't let anything stop her now. Backstage, 30 minutes before curtain, another crisis emerged. Adrian found his mother waiting in the wings, her expression tense. Mother, you need to leave. This area is restricted. I needed to speak with you before the broadcast, Evelyn interrupted. Adrian, this has gone too far. Your association with that girl is going to embarrass this family on national television. Her name is Naomi, Adrian said coldly, and I'm not associated with her. I'm proud of her. You're making a fool of yourself. No, Mother. You're making a fool of yourself. Adrian's voice was firm, unwavering. For the first time in my life, I'm proud of someone for the right reasons. Not because of their name or their connections, but because they're genuinely extraordinary. And if you can't see that, then you're blinder than I thought. Evelyn's composure finally cracked. She's using you. She's doing nothing of the sort. She barely tolerates my help. She doesn't want anything from me except to be left alone to sing. Adrian's voice rose with frustration. And you know what? That's what makes her special. She's the only person in my life who's never wanted something from me. She just wants to be herself. And I'm proud of her for that. I'm proud of someone for the first time in my life. And I won't let you take that away. The raw emotion in his voice silenced Evelyn completely. She stared at her son, seeing something in him she'd never seen before. Conviction, passion, genuine feeling. For the first time, Adrian wasn't the apathetic boy coasting on his name. He was a man defending something that mattered to him. If you can't support this, Adrian said more quietly, then at least don't sabotage it. She deserves better than that, and honestly, so do I. He walked away, leaving his mother standing alone in the wings, her carefully constructed arguments crumbling around her. 20 minutes before curtain, Naomi stood backstage, hearing the audience fill the auditorium. The sound was overwhelming. 2,000 people shuffling into seats, cameras being positioned, the low hum of anticipation building. Mrs. Lyle found her there, frozen with terror. I can't do this, Naomi whispered, her earlier resolve evaporating. There are too many people, too many cameras. Everyone's watching. What, if I fail? Mrs. Lyle grabbed her shoulders firmly. Look at me, child. Naomi met her eyes. You don't sing for them. Not for the cameras, not for the judges, not for the people who doubt you. You sing for the little girl who needed a voice. My daughter, your younger self. Every person who was told they weren't good enough because of where they came from. You sing for truth. Tears streamed down Naomi's face, but she nodded. Now breathe, Mrs. Lyle commanded. Center yourself. Remember who you are. Naomi closed her eyes and found that quiet place inside where the music lived. She thought of her father's last embrace, her mother's faith. every moment that had brought her to this impossible place. When she opened her eyes, she was ready. Adrian appeared in the wings, having navigated the backstage chaos to find her. Their eyes met across the crowded space, and he mouthed 3 words. "I believe you." Something in Naomi's chest unlocked. She smiled. Really smiled. For the first time that day. The stage manager's voice crackled through the speakers. 5 minutes to curtain. Miss Carter, please take your position. Naomi walked toward the stage entrance, each step more certain than the last. She could hear the announcer's voice over the sound system, introducing the conservatory, explaining the showcase's significance, building anticipation for what was to come. Then she heard her own name. And now, please welcome our headliner, Naomi Carter, performing Mozart's Der Hölle Rache. The curtain lifted. The lights blazed. 2,000 faces turned toward her. Cameras zoomed in from multiple angles. Somewhere out there, millions of people were tuning in, watching, judging. Naomi walked to center stage, her taped shoe holding firm, her posture perfect. She looked exactly like she belonged there. Regal, composed, powerful. The orchestra began the introduction. Naomi closed her eyes, found her breath, and let everything else fall away. Then she opened her mouth and sang. The first note was pure, crystal, perfect. So perfect it seemed to stop time itself. The audience immediately stilled, every whisper dying mid-breath. The cameras captured the stunned expressions rippling through the crowd. Adrian, watching from the wings, felt tears stream down his face before the first phrase was complete. Naomi sang. No, she possessed the stage. Every emotion she'd suppressed for years poured into the music. The rage of being invisible, the pain of being dismissed, the joy of finally being heard. The Queen of the Night's fury became Naomi's own story, channeled through Mozart's impossible notes. Her voice filled every corner of the massive auditorium, crystal clear and emotionally devastating. The high passages that destroyed most singers flowed from her effortlessly, each note placed with surgical precision, yet overflowing with raw feeling. In the audience, people forgot they were watching a performance. They were experiencing something transcendent. The OSX television cameras captured it all. The way her body became an instrument, the tears streaming down audience members' faces, the musicians in the orchestra playing with renewed passion, inspired by what they were accompanying. Adrian Kingsley, sitting stiffly in the back row, felt her resistance crumbling. This wasn't just good, this was historic. And her son had recognized it before she had. Amara, seated among the staff in the side section, sobbed openly, her hands clasped in prayer, watching her daughter claim the destiny she'd been too afraid to want for herself. Dr. Hale sat motionless, his eyes closed, simply listening, storing this memory for the rest of his life. As Naomi reached the aria's famous high F sequence, she didn't just hit the notes. She soared through them, each one ringing out with impossible clarity and sustained with unwavering strength. The acoustics carried her voice to the very last row without any amplification, pure and perfect. Then came the final, impossible high note, sustained, crystalline, absolutely flawless. The note seemed to hang in the air even after she'd finished, echoing in the stunned silence. 5 full seconds passed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The entire world seemed frozen in the aftermath of what they'd just witnessed. Then, like a breaking dam, the audience erupted. The sound was deafening. 2,000 people on their feet, screaming, sobbing, applauding with everything they had. The ovation was thunderous, primal, unstoppable. Students who had mocked her weeks ago cried openly. Faculty members who had doubted her ability stood with tears streaming down their faces. Even the camera operators forgot their jobs, joining the standing ovation. Naomi stood at center stage, trembling violently, overwhelmed by the response. Tears poured down her face as the reality of what she'd just accomplished crashed over her. Adrian was already moving. He vaulted from the wings onto the stage, live on national television, in front of everyone, and walked directly to her. He didn't grab the microphone. He didn't make a speech. He simply stood beside her as the crowd continued its thunderous applause, his presence saying what words couldn't. "I'm with you." Naomi looked at him through her tears, and he took her hand. Not romantically, not possessively, just solidarity. Two people who had found something real in a world of pretense. The cameras captured it all. The standing ovation, Adrian's unscripted appearance, Naomi's tears of joy and disbelief, the entire room united in recognition of something extraordinary. When the applause finally began to fade, nearly 3 full minutes later, Dr. Hale walked onto the stage with a microphone, his own eyes red from crying. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice unsteady, "in all my years at this conservatory, I have never... This is..." He couldn't finish. He simply gestured to Naomi, and the applause erupted again. Backstage, after Naomi had taken 4 separate bows and the show had finally moved to its next performers, she collapsed into a chair, shaking uncontrollably from adrenaline and emotion. Mrs. Lyle wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "You did it, child. You actually did it." "I can't believe that just happened," Naomi gasped. "Believe it. The whole world just saw what I've known all along. You're extraordinary." As the showcase continued around them, Naomi's phone, which she'd left in her dressing room, began exploding with notifications, messages, calls, emails, all flooding in at once. The performance was already going viral online. Clips were being shared millions of times. Major news outlets were picking up the story. In just 3 minutes of singing, Naomi had become a national sensation. Later, after the showcase had ended and the television crews were packing up, reporters swarmed Naomi. Questions flew from every direction, cameras in her face, microphones thrust toward her. She was overwhelmed, exhausted, barely able to process what was happening. Then one reporter, grinning mischievously, called out to Adrian, who was standing nearby. "Mr. Kingsley, didn't you once joke that you'd marry whoever could sing this piece?" The room went silent. All cameras swung toward Adrian. Adrian looked at the reporter, then at Naomi, then back at the cameras. A slow smile spread across his face. "I did say that," he admitted. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But Adrian's expression grew serious and he turned to look directly at Naomi. "But that was before I understood what real talent looked like, what real courage looked like." His voice was quiet but clear, picked up by every microphone in the room. "So no, I'm not holding anyone to a stupid joke I made. But I am proud of her. Genuinely, deeply proud. And I want to be in her life, if she'll have me." The room erupted with noise, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. But Naomi only saw Adrian. She walked toward him through the chaos, her face flushed, her heart pounding. "You can ask me again," she said softly, "when the world isn't watching." Adrian's smile widened. "Deal." The crowd roared with laughter and applause. In the days that followed, Naomi's life transformed completely. Scholarship offers poured in from prestigious music academies around the world. Agents contacted her. Opera houses expressed interest. She was no longer the Maid's daughter. She was Naomi Carter, the voice that had captivated a nation. Major news networks ran stories about her. From custodial staff to center stage became a headline repeated across the country. Her performance video accumulated millions of views. Music critics called her a once-in-a-generation talent and the voice of our time. The conservatory saw a massive influx of donations, not from the old guard protecting tradition, but from new donors inspired by Naomi's story. Dr. Hale established a scholarship fund in her name for students from non-traditional backgrounds. Chloe, watching all this from her suspension, felt a strange mixture of regret and relief. She'd lost, yes, but she'd also been freed from the crushing pressure of having to be perfect. She started therapy, began examining why she'd been so threatened by Naomi's success, and slowly started the work of becoming a better person. Evelyn Kingsley, in a private moment with her son, finally admitted something she'd never said before. "You were right about her. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner." Adrian accepted the apology, but things between them had fundamentally changed. He'd stood up to her, chosen his own values over her expectations, and found himself stronger for it. 3 weeks later, Naomi received a full scholarship to the Manhattan Conservatory, one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. She would leave at the end of the term, beginning a new life far from the hallways she'd once cleaned. On her last evening at Kingsley Conservatory, she stood alone on the empty stage where everything had changed. She touched the microphone, remembering the terror and triumph of that night. Adrian found her there, as somehow she'd known he would. "Ready for your next chapter?" he asked, sitting beside her on the edge of the stage. "Terrified," Naomi admitted, "but also excited." "You're going to be incredible. You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Adrian smiled, then added quietly, "I meant what I said that night, about wanting to be in your life." Naomi turned to look at him fully. "I know, but Adrian, our worlds are so different." "They were," he interrupted gently. "But you changed the world just by being brave enough to sing. If you can do that, we can figure out the rest. One step at a time." Naomi considered this, then smiled. "One step at a time," she agreed. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stage lights dim one by one. "You know," Adrian said eventually, "that joke about marriage, it really was the stupidest thing I've ever said." Naomi laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. "It definitely was. But I'm glad I said it, because it led to you. And you're the best thing that's happened to this place in years." "I'm the best thing that's happened to me in years," Naomi said softly. "I finally get to sing for myself, not in secret, not in fear. Just sing. That's all I ever wanted," she whispered. "This time I sing for me." The stage lights went out completely, leaving them in darkness, but neither moved. They sat there together, two people from different worlds who had found common ground in music and courage, and the simple truth that talent had nothing to do with where you came from. Outside the auditorium, the world was waiting, full of opportunity, challenge, and possibility. But for this moment, in the dark, on the stage where everything had changed, Naomi Carter was exactly where she belonged. And for the first time in her life, she truly believed it. When you're forced to choose between the safety of silence and the risk of your own voice, which would truly cost you more? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about courage, redemption, and the power of never giving up on who you're meant to be.